networking is about connection, in-person connection. It's not necessarily LinkedIn or Facebook. That can be one partial way to get there, but that should never be the all encompassing. It needs to be a personal connectivity. So don't totally count on LinkedIn to get you where you want to go. It needs to be personal.
The Digital Banking Podcast is powered by Typhon. Typhon is the creator of Infinia, a dramatically better digital banking platform for community financial institutions, as well as several platform-agnostic, revenue-generating point solutions. Our highly configurable platform and broad ecosystem of third-party partners ensure our entire suite is scalable and extensible to meet the needs of any FI. On our podcast, you will hear host Josh DeTar discuss today's most pressing financial technology topics with seasoned industry experts from every possible discipline.
You know, your podcast hasn't officially made it until there's ads in it. But this is one you're not going to want to skip past. And, well, if you do, feel free to hit that fast forward 15 seconds button twice. Ever wonder what gives me my energy and enthusiasm during these podcasts? You know, outside of my relentless desire to learn about, connect, share, and build up community FIs and their mission to support the communities they serve? It's coffee, and lots of it. Now, you want to know what's better than your regular old coffee? How about donating $5 to the Children's Miracle Network hospitals through credit unions for kids every time you purchase high-quality, ethically sourced coffee that also provides living wages to coffee farmers? So if you want to listen to this episode with epic levels of caffeine-induced focus and help kids in need, head to javaforkids.org to learn more and buy a bag or 10. Thanks.
Welcome to another episode of the Digital Banking Podcast. My guest today is Bill Kennedy, the controller for Forefront Credit Union. Through today's episode, you'll quickly see why I was so motivated to convince Bill to be a guest on the podcast. The authentic and deep-rooted desire to make an impact is so blatantly apparent in Bill, it's something to behold. I've had the fortune to meet a few people in life that make me think there might be a possibility reincarnation is a real thing. There's just no other explanation for how much life some people have lived and how much they have seen, done, accomplished, and been a part of. Bill is one of those people. Bill has been a credit union executive for over 35 years, 18 years as a CEO and 17 years as a CFO. He was named NAFQ's CEO of the Year and CUNA's CFO of the Year. Now, Bill's first job out of college was actually at a bank, and they hired him simply because they wanted to win 2 golf tournaments, and he was a pretty darn good golfer. He later fell into credit unions by total mistake, as he mentions most credit union leaders do. He was working for the Federal Savings and Loan Insurance Corporation. He, and more importantly, his wife, didn't love all the travel that came with the role. So his wife sent his resume to a credit union. Later, he got a call from the Department of Justice Federal Credit Union saying they wanted to talk, and he had no idea he'd even applied. He said his sign that this was a good move, though, his boss at the time said, "You would be a great addition to the credit union community." Why? Because Bill believes his purpose in life is to be a shining light to others, like his mentors were to him. Along the way, his mentors taught him the power and criticality of certain things, and a big one was giving back and paying it forward. This is why he fits in well in the credit union space. It's about people helping people. Bill says the biggest thing his time in the industry brought him was the abundance of wonderful people into his life. And those mentor relationships he built for himself, he extended to others. He's mentored over 200 people and even spent 10 years as an adjunct faculty. Though through this, he has been able to bring even some of his greatest mentors like Dr. Ben Carson to mentor once a quarter to his interns and management trainees at the credit union. It's about people. Do the right things, set out to make a difference, not to win an award. He says networking is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself. And Bill believes golf is one of the best ways he can do it. He says golf is his passion. Although he didn't get to play as much last year as he would have liked, he says there's no better way to connect on a deep level with someone than spending 4.5 hours with them playing golf. Bill has 5 children, and they all play golf. And one of his daughters has even golfed with former President Barack Obama. Name others that have been able to spend 3+ hours with the president with their dedicated, undivided attention. That's pretty cool. So without further ado, I can't wait to talk to Bill and have him share his experiences and his learnings with us. So Bill, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being a guest today.
Thank you, Josh. I'm excited to share with you the knowledge and experience that I have. I will focus on my experiences directly. I'll try to mainly discuss that because there's so much to talk about. I don't want to talk about a lot of things that I personally haven't experienced.
Well, and two, I mean, we're going to have to, eat dinner and get some sleep at some point. And I think without that, I could probably talk to you all day. So no, and I do want to be cognizant of, there was one statement that you wanted to make just about the representation that you have today is that of yours personally and may not be those of Forefront Credit Union. So I just want to make sure that that's on record.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Well, so let's jump in. And, as I talked to you and as, folks heard in kind of the introduction to you as a guest, it's really apparent to me that one of the things that you are the most passionate about is really mentoring people to kind of be the best versions of themselves. Do you mind just explaining a little bit of like, what was the genesis of kind of that thought process and how did you evolve into being somebody that was so mindful and thoughtful about the impact you could have through mentorship?
Well, I was very, very fortunate to, at a relatively young age, I learned very quickly some very important lessons. I shared with you that I'm a golfer. I also played some tennis. I was a member of a country club at 24, and I learned something that I didn't know, is that great leaders are always looking to create leadership disciples, if I may use that word. And so I was playing in the finals of the championship of golf, and I was playing in the finals of doubles tennis. And I had an injury when I played high school football to my Achilles that kind of put me back a little bit. But I found out that leaders at the country club were watching me in these events. And even though I didn't win the final of the golf or the final of the doubles, they said, and they knew I was hampered by my injury. They said that my competitiveness and the way I comported myself, and they had done some research on me. I didn't know. This is the chairman of the board of the country club. And he said, we want you to be part of our team here and I was 24 years old.
That's me.
And they said to me, and I've had coaches, I played sports pretty much all my life, but I've never really had what you would distinguish as a mentor. I've had coaches who taught you how to be good at a different sport, but they didn't really put a lot into your personal development. Well, they put me in touch with a gentleman named Hassel Bell, who was 82 years old. I will tell you, Hassel didn't know anything about technology. Okay, but boy, was he so wise. He taught me some of the most important things that I pass on to my mentees, that they are the CEO of their own personal services corporation. They own their journey. Okay? To surround yourself with a board of advisors, whether it's, you consider it a board, whether you consider it mentors, whatever, surround yourself and be strategic about it. Who you pick to be in your life. And because, again, as I shared with you, great leaders understand one of the three core principles of being a leader is to pay it back and to become a mentor to future leaders. That was the first thing that I learned. And then he taught me that the two things as a CEO of your own personal services corporation are you need to be a value creator. You must create value where you're planted. And after you've been creating value, and you must understand what value you're creating, because that's a tremendous exercise. If you can go through that process, not easy, to determine what value you create for your credit union. Okay? It really helps you in your performance evaluations, trust me. And then to be a growth stock. You must be a value creator first and then a growth stock leader. Being better today than you were a year ago. And being better a year from now and looking back. Because it's one of the most motivational things, as long as you have a plan to get where you're going, to look back and say, look how far I have come. So I learned that from Hassel. He taught me some, incredible things. And so I also had a mentor at the Department of Justice, Jim Hogan. He was the number 2 guy at FBI, and he was my mentor, not because I was on parole or I was in,
That's what they all say.
you know, I so Jim Hogan was the treasurer. He was phenomenal. He taught me so many things too. He taught me the criticality of paying it back. He was obviously treasurer of the credit union board, being involved. He taught me about teaching, making sure you go out and teach. That's when I taught for 10 years part-time as a business faculty. But the giving back, the credit union model is about people helping people and giving back and collaboration. I will tell you that, in my opinion, the number one competitive advantage of credit unions outside of people helping people is collaboration. And in order to collaborate both internally and externally is the strength of credit unions, because you never have to be a lone wolf. You never have to recreate the wheel. I had met so many wonderful people, that I can reach out to them if I need something that I can put out there. And most of the time I'll get some, if they're experiencing that, they'll give me some shared wisdom. So taking that into consideration, I've never had to be a lone wolf or never had to make a decision that was totally not, that I didn't feel some comfort level in. So I have believed that has been my purpose in life, to help people. And being 10 years as adjunct faculty, business faculty, I learned the criticality of having internships, and then which segued into management training programs, which led to things like meeting Dr. Ben Carson. So, because he's all about bringing up young people and giving them a chance to learn and make a difference. So that's really the bottom line of who I am.
You know, you've said a couple of things that really fascinate me, Bill, because I feel like this is something that even I'm on a continual journey personally in, is, what type of leader do I want to be? And, as I've kind of gone through different evolutions of myself over the years, and I think one of the bigger ones was, becoming a parent, and just that relationship that creates, and the mindset shift that happens in that is so prescribed to your methodology here of, I think the greatest thing that I can do when I'm, laying my head on my pillow for the very last time is look back and say, I had a positive impact on other people. And I was a part of helping them see their best versions of themselves. And you kind of started by talking about this whole, you'd had coaches, but there's a very big difference between a coach and a mentor. And as I've kind of gone through this personal evaluation of just my own leadership style over the years and how I approach different situations, I've looked back at my previous leaders and what things worked well and what things did I resonate well with. And what I find really interesting and what I'd love to get your perspective on is, even in today's day and age where we have basically unlimited information at our fingertips, right? The ability to network with people is greater than it's ever been. It's incredible to me to see so many different styles of quote unquote boss these days, right? And you still see a lot of the people that just, want to crack the whip from behind the cart. And then you see a lot of people that are recognizing, servant leadership as a different approach that actually empowers people. And so, as you've kind of gone through your journey and as you've mentored people through this journey, one, maybe start by just talking through the differentiation between a coach and a mentor. And then how have you applied some of those philosophies to help kind of raise up the next generation of leaders based on that thought process?
I would say a coach is mainly focused on your performance in the specific event that they are involved with you. Okay. So I played football, I played baseball, I played golf, I played basketball. And it was about the game, frankly. But when you have a mentor, they are more about who you are and developing you personally and helping you navigate your journey forward. That's why it's important, frankly. They have good things to share, but not everybody can share the same things. That's why it's important for you to surround yourself with a number of people and strategically do it. So if I could say, so you have to do some research and you have to be strategic about it. And you have to research, like I shared with you, leaders, if they're true leaders, understand that their responsibility is to develop new people. It's one of their top 3 things. So they're always on the lookout. But you have to position yourself to be on their radar, some way, shape, or form. So many times, and I'll use the credit union example, if I may, is that credit unions, frankly, many of them are your retired folks, if you will, on the board, and they don't have a lot of programs to bring up younger people. But those that are smart do. So my advice to younger people is to get in those type of situations where you can surround yourself with 7, 9 leaders, and just by being on their radar will migrate down to you that you can learn so much. For example, okay, so I shared golf. I mean, it is what it is. I often position myself to play golf, if I could, with leaders. I will tell you that I met Ken Robinson, who I think the world of. He was the CEO of NAFCU 3 years ago. He was also a dedicated military person. He was a colonel, general maybe. To spend 4.5 hours on the golf course with Ken Rob, he became one of my mentors just because I positioned myself to play golf with him. And you can do that find out if you're a leader, does food banks or does whatever they do, figure out what they do and then position yourself to be, not to be aggressive, too aggressive, but to position yourself so that they can see who you are. And that could lead into, so my advice to you, people that I've been fortunate to mentor, is to try to surround yourself with 5 people to start. 2 people in your current arena to help you become good at what you do. 2 people that are steps above you that maybe be in the same industry that can help you have a vision to where you're going. And then 1 person from totally outside of your industry that is just a phenomenal person, if you can get on their radar, to be on your board of advisors. And there's 5 people. And as you get better, as you grow, then you can add to that arsenal. Don't start off too big with too many people, but that's critical. Position yourself to be on the radar of leaders, and you have to strategically do it. And a good way to do it is sometimes going to conferences and being out there and making sure you're connecting with people, getting to see who you are. It's wonderful. That's absolutely a wonderful way to do it. And I just encourage people to network. I do want to make one comment, if I may.
Of course.
Networking is about connection, in-person connection. It's not necessarily LinkedIn or Facebook. That can be one partial way to get there, but that should never be the all-encompassing. It needs to be a personal connectivity. So don't totally count on LinkedIn to get you where you want to go. It needs to be personal.
That brings up a good point. As you were talking about that, it had me thinking, this really needs to be a symbiotic relationship, right? The mentor needs to want to be a mentor and have developed the skill set to be an effective mentor. And the more they mentor, the more they're going to hone those skills at being an effective mentor. But the mentee also has to have a willingness to listen, open ears, and be able to take that advice and understand how to apply it to their own situation or their own life. And that takes practice. And like you were saying, kind of start small, develop these relationships, understand how to, find the right mentors for you, and then how to actually, extract value out of that relationship. But at the same time, how do you give back, right? I mean, what's really interesting is you were talking about it is really funny to think about, how much you see that on LinkedIn, right? A lot of times there's a lot of, connections that happen on LinkedIn. And the only reason I'm connecting with you is because I'm trying to sell you something, right? But there's also a lot of real genuine connection that can come out of that. I can use myself as an example. I mean, I can tell you I have people that have become very close humans in my life that I care genuinely about because of a LinkedIn connection, but also through, other in-person connections. But you have to kind of start with the willingness and the actual authentic desire for that to happen. Kind of like what you were talking about earlier with even just awards and things. Like if that's the end goal, if the end goal is just, I need to connect with Bill because at some point I got to sell Bill something. That's very different than just, I've had this really incredible opportunity to have Bill brought into my life. And I see him as somebody that I could really enjoy having a relationship with, having conversations with. And there's a wealth of knowledge that I could learn to draw from. who knows what the world holds after that? But when you start with that, then we both develop a genuine relationship where we care about seeing each other succeed. I think that's a very different mindset that a lot of times, especially with some of these, new digital tools for being able to, quote unquote, network and collaborate and connect, it becomes very transactional versus very relational.
That's the key. And when I start off every mentorship, I go through the CEO, the ownership of your own personal services journey, talk about value, because I want to demonstrate that I care about them. Okay. I don't start off, I'll teach you how to do a 5,300, or I'll teach no, that's not what the relationship's about. It could migrate maybe to have some little part of it, but it's all about you and how I can help you. And I have to learn about you, and you have to be willing to share with me in open, trusting relationships about what you perceive you need strengths in and weaknesses, and I can help you. So it's about a personal relationship. And that's what it's about when you put your head to the pillow, like you said, or when it's time, when your time is up, what impact have you made on others? And it's huge. I believe it's huge.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know. I think I've talked about it quite a few times on this podcast. I remember being a kid and my dad, to this day, his email address is still Brian Positively. And he's the most positive guy I've ever met. And it used to drive me nuts, Bill. He would just try so hard to make the day of the person at the checkout line at the grocery store. And I was like, good grief, old man. We just buy our groceries and get out of here. And the older I become, the more I realize, man, you don't realize the impact you have on people in just every interaction. And you know what? That person who's, ringing up your groceries at the grocery store, I don't know, but give it some ridiculous scenario. They just lost a parent or something, and they're having a really bad day. And just one person taking the time to go, hey, I see you as another human. And I'd love to see you smile. You don't realize just the impact that can actually have on.
I think that's so true. And you might not even know the impact, but they will always know.
Yeah.
Right. They will always know that somebody tried to make a connection with me and to be positive. And that is so true. So kudos to your dad for doing that, because it's not easy. It's not easy. A lot of people look at you, come on, I'm in line, hurry up, but doing that is really cool.
Yeah, I don't know. It is really interesting, the perspectives you have. And like I said, it's interesting to see my perspectives change, especially becoming a father myself as well, and watching that transformation is, again, we're always just in such a race in life to get to the next thing, to do the next thing. And are we just racing to the day where we rest our head on the pillow for the last time and go, I kind of really didn't do anything except race through this thing? Or say, you know what? I stopped to smell the roses. I stopped to make someone's day. I stopped to make an impact. Now, those are the things that definitely a new lease on life as you start to get older and have quality mentors that, help to highlight the things that are really important and that will also bring you joy, right? I see this in you. And I think this is why I was so excited to have you as a guest on the podcast, Bill, and why, in your intro, I said, you can tell this is so authentic in you. Because I can tell how excited you get when you talk about the impacts you've had for others. So you're doing something for someone else, but it's also doing something for you. I can physically see the joy that it brings you to know that you've had even one small positive impact on one person out of 200, that would bring you joy. So there's value in that all around.
There's nothing, I will tell you, that there's nothing like adding fuel to the fire of the engagement to make a difference when someone demonstrates their gratitude 5 years after the fact that, hey, you really made a difference in my journey. Thank you. That's just more encouragement to keep doing it.
The credit union industry in specific, especially the more that I've been involved in it over the last decade, is a really interesting. One of the things that I love so much about the credit union industry is how much there is a desire to really internally live that ethos of people helping people. And you see that represented through a lot of mentorship and a lot of opportunities to grow people through the credit union. But we're also credit unions are going through their own kind of transformation right now, if you ask me. And we're starting to see this huge move from kind of the traditional way that we thought about banking and relationships in banking and brick and mortar. And we're moving to adding so much more in terms of technology. And so at the same time, you're seeing a shift in kind of the strategies, the approaches of credit unions, but you're also having to see an influx of new types of personalities. All of a sudden now you need the total tech geek. You need the person that really understands, deep levels of, data dissection or API connections. And so we're starting to have to attract new roles, new personalities, new types of people. We're also trying to find ways to, nurture and mentor up the next generation of leadership within the credit union at the same time. So how do you kind of reconcile all of these changes that are happening in the credit union industry and what kind of impact that has for, how you look at just hiring and attracting the right types of talent and then, nurturing and mentoring them within the institution?
Well, I will say that when you meet a lot of people of my generation, a little bit after, totally fell into credit unions, right? So there needs to be a actual collaborative focus on attracting people to the credit union movement. And one of the ways you can do that is to show them, and if this is a fact, that there's going to be a boatload of retirements in the credit union movement, leadership retirements in the next 5 to 10 years. There's going to be a boatload. So for someone who has vision and can see the future, and they can get positive mentors to get them there, do the right things, they can establish a game plan to become a leader in the credit union movement. There's not a lot of industries that you can do that, right? So you can, as long as you have an entrepreneurial mindset that you can, I'm going to keep learning, and you have to have a continuous learning emphasis, and you can really make a career out of the credit union movement because we need you. It's a fact. There's going to be a lot of retirements, right? And the credit union movement needs to have a game plan to attract people. It can't rely on people falling in. And that partly is mentorship. But I want to establish a couple things that I believe are the criticality of the competitive advantage of credit unions. There's some things I'll discuss that are not. Collaboration is not, I believe, one of the most important. People, we are willing to collaborate internally and externally, and to develop a continuous learning environment. When you talk about technology, okay, so I will say technology is going to always be increasing and changing. So you must have a culture of continuous learning. But that doesn't mean that you have to jump in head first with technology. You have to look at your culture, your strategy. Now, one of the negative things about a lot of credit unions is their risk averseness. They just don't want to take any risk. They don't want to do anything unless Joe down the street's done it already. And there is some validity to that because credit unions are, frankly, in a mature stage of their existence. So when you're in the mature stage of your existence, you need to have game plans to change that rigidity, that risk averseness. Again, it doesn't mean jumping in. It means perhaps looking at your culture, looking at who you are, and implementing small technology projects, maybe 3-month projects, that you can succeed in. Be willing to take that risk. It might not work out. You learn from it. You create your wisdom learning matrix. 3 things I did right, 3 things I could have done different, 3 things that I wish I knew about. If I had known about it, I could have made it different. So things I didn't know. And as you develop that wisdom learning matrix, you become, and you journalize it, whatever, both credit union wide and individually, you become a learning person. And it gives you a lot more confidence to take a little bit more risk each time because you have developed that. And then you also know that I don't see, it hasn't changed a whole lot. So, and I've been in credit unions, as I shared with you, a long time. Always that collaboration between other credit unions has been there. And so I can always reach out and share it with people that have already done things, and they can share that. Most of them will share the wisdom matrix, what they learned. And again, it's about sharing. I think I can safely say that when you're in banking and you go to a conference, the bankers aren't sharing anything with each other, really. Credit unions share. Okay. So it makes our movement really solid. But we need to be willing to take a little bit more risk. And I'm not saying again, throw the whole ball of wax at, I mean, certainly with the taxi medallion stuff, credit unions get in trouble by jumping too far into the deep end. So the taxi medallion thing just sunk about a handful of credit unions, certainly putting a bunch of 3.25%, 3.5% 30-year mortgages on your portfolio. That in credit unions, we're not about that. We're supposed to be balanced and not taking a deep dive into a lot of things. So I really believe in terms of technology is not your strategy. Technology should be a partial solution to where you're going. And you mentioned young people. I will say that certainly the younger folks have been brought up with more technology. But that in and of itself doesn't make them more valuable than a leader, because in my opinion, someone who's been through the ropes, who has developed a wisdom matrix as a leader, it's easier to train them on digital proficiency than it is to take a data scientist and make them a leader. I really believe that. Okay. So become a leader first, become that, indoctrinated into that. And then you can pivot as need be, because technology is going to change all the time. And you have to know that the technology of 8 years ago was not the technology of today. So you have to be a continuous learner, and you have to indoctrinate that in yourself, that those skill set is going to be obsolete. And so being a leader and a wisdom learning will enhance that and will give you the confidence to do that. And I believe that credit unions need to take a look at and implement technology that is to their advantage, okay? To create a budget within reason, to do mini projects. You don't risk the whole ball of wax, and to have successes. Develop a learning matrix, collaboration matrix amongst your teammates. And the more successful projects that you have and you can learn from, the next projects will go better. And it's just a continuing success cycle. So again, the organization, the credit union, I believe that the leadership needs to be continuously relearning. Don't be stuck in the old way of doing things. You must adopt and adapt new technology and to your purposes. And I believe it'll be it'll help as long as the credit unions continue to maintain their people helping people philosophy. Okay. We implement that all the time. The CEO of our credit union, he's all about helping people. Okay. I shared with you, I don't want to get too deep into it, that there were 60 credit unions that were affected by a hack, small credit unions, and our CEO reached out to one of the small credit unions in this area. How can we help you? Right. Isn't that what it's about? Our CEO invests in 13 credit union CUSOs to help, to be involved. Our credit union CEO was very involved in helping the movement. And it's kind of gratifying to work for somebody like that. It filters down. And so I want to be that kind of person too, to make a difference, to help the entire credit union community. I will say that some of the things that the credit union community promotes, like there's a lot of mergers going on. I have personally asked CUES, Filene, the leagues, schools to create opportunities for example, in colleges, in your executive MBA and MBA programs, they have a capstone requirement that you have to go do a volunteer project for a not-for-profit. Why can't the credit unions be the recipient? Even if the person's not a credit union person. If you're not in an executive MBA program, unless you're a pretty sharp person, they can add value. Why can't Filene create, their I3 program is wonderful. Okay. Why can't they create a program that upcoming leaders could virtually, if they can, go out and help create smaller credit unions? Right? Everybody agrees that smaller credit unions, if you will, are what the larger credit unions need to fight the battles against taxation, right? It's the small credit unions. When the congressmen want to talk to people, they don't want to talk to the $1 billion shops. They want to talk to the $50 million shops, right? And if we keep having 50 million shops going south to merge, that taxation issue could be diluted. So why can't the Filenes and the Qs, the leagues, there's other ways to do it too. So again, as you know, as you get older, you've got this people helping people philosophy in you. So whether you're being paid for credit, maybe you're retired. Okay, I will tell you the Maryland DC Credit Union Association has Roycroft. They're called Roycroft. There's like 8 retired credit union personnel that go out and help. So why can't that be why can't that be all over the place? Why can't these 60 credit unions that have been sucker punched, why can't they have a arsenal that people can come and help them, right? Because they need it. It's just being down 2 weeks can really hurt your reputation with your members. And if you had shared, if it's okay with me to share this, you were involved with one too, and you were able to get the resources and yourself and go out and help this credit union within 4 days get back online, not 2 weeks. So you yourself espouse that helping. Why can't that be all over the place? I believe if that's out there, getting the younger people involved. I mean, what better way to learn about leadership than to go out and help a credit union that needs your leadership? And I'm not talking about from a job standpoint. I'm talking about from a volunteer standpoint, whether it's going to help them or whether it's getting on their board, right? So I don't want to beat a dead horse, but the collaborative nature and continuous learning and make people helping people is the credit union difference. And I'd like to see more. Certainly, CUNA has the Crashers program. It's a wonderful program.
Love it.
Absolutely wonderful program.
Before we get too far, I want to just make sure on the record, I make sure one thing is correct. So in that scenario where you were talking about, where we were able to support one of the credit unions that was down by getting them back up, I was not one of the folks that was on site. And I want to give a massive, massive shout out to Shelly Williams, who, as soon as she heard the news, literally bought the first flight, packed her bags, and was out the door. So I was not one of the ones that was personally involved in that. That was a team thing, and that was one of the things that was led by an amazing individual, Shelly Williams. So I just want to give her that shout out and credit. But, as you were talking, Bill, first off, I was thinking, you're one of my favorite and least favorite types of guests all at the same time, because you give me so many incredible things to talk about. You make my mind race a million miles a minute. And anybody who knows me well enough to know knows I don't remember what I had for breakfast, and I don't even eat breakfast. So remembering all the things that you just gave me as incredible nuggets and being able to draw back on them, it really tests me. So I love it, and it kills me at the same time. But, one of the common themes that I was thinking about as you were talking is, you kind of talked about you get into a place of stagnation, right? You get into a place where you're comfortable. And comfortable is actually a very dangerous place to be. Because when you're comfortable is one of the places that you're most ripe for disruption. And so you need to have kind of that culture of continuous learning and looking out for the potential risks of things like disruption. And this is not just from a business model standpoint. This is even just from your own personal growth. And, you can kind of apply this across a multitude of areas. But, when you're kind of stale and you feel like I'm good, or we're good, I don't need to do anything more, is probably when you need to raise the red flag of, no, this is probably actually the most important time for me to be doing that. And, I'd never actually heard somebody kind of put it that way, Bill, of talking about, if you look at just credit unions kind of existence as a whole, they've kind of in the last decade or so been in a pretty good, comfortable spot, right? Now, we can argue some of the semantics, and we've seen a lot of, as you highlighted, a lot of mergers. The overall number of credit unions over the last decade has declined significantly. But in relative terms, like credit unions have been in a pretty comfortable spot. We keep doing kind of what we're doing. We've been able to weather some of the storms, but that's probably a really good indicator that we as an industry need to start thinking about kind of this next generation and what happens next and what comes next and how do we continue to provide value. And this kind of parlays into what you were talking about raising up the next generation of credit union leadership, because we really need folks that are kind of thinking in that terms, right? At the same time as we have kind of a leadership attrition coming, we have a membership one coming too, right? You look at the average age of credit union members across the country, and again, we can all, get down to brass tacks and some granular details. And I know it's not this bleak, but for all intents and purposes, we've got an aging out membership base. And, I had a previous guest talk about just having a member succession plan just as much as a CEO succession plan. Like, what are you going to do as your members start to age out? So we're looking at how are we bringing in the next generation of, credit union leaders and people to be passionate about this. We're going through this change of kind of the physical, butting heads with digital. We've got competition like we've never had before from the competitors we know in the big banks to the competitors that we don't know in some of the fintechs and big tech. And at the same time, you're trying to figure out navigating this new world, bringing in new members, bringing in new leadership, and trying not to be stale in that process. While the most important part of that whole thing is what you alluded to, is not losing sight of that shining light of what has made credit unions different. And it is that people helping people. And I think you're the right type of guest to kind of talk about this with. And it's I know it sounds like a wonderful kumbaya, making s'mores around the fireplace kind of thing, but it's a real thing. It's a real thing that's very tangible. And I think when you'll notice it the most is when it's not there, right? And there's lots of studies and reports that show what happens to a community when a community financial institution closes in that community. Right? There are devastating impacts that happen to real human beings. There are real ripple effects that come out of this. And so it is important for us to think about, hey, as we kind of grow, evolve, meet new challenges and opportunities, how do we keep that core guiding light of it's people helping people that's our differentiator? So even as we move into more of a technology-based relationship with maybe some of these younger generations, if all we do is say we're going to go tit for tat with the big banks and the fintechs in terms of features and tech, and that's how we're going to compete, I think we're missing something. We're actually missing the most important secret ingredient to our secret sauce, which is if we're not building a relationship all the way back to the very first thing you started with, right? Like building genuine, real relationships with people where it's not just transactional. It's, I want to have a positive impact on your life. If we're not having that ideology in this move to technology, then we've missed something.
Absolutely. It's happening. I think it again boils down to risk. Okay. We have the credit union movement waves the flag of the volunteer board members. I will speak specifically to my experiences. I think they could be extrapolated pretty well, but a lot of the board members are not business people. Okay. And they don't understand making an investment in a technology company, right? There's a chance you can lose that. You lose that investment. Are you willing to lose that investment? I will share with you that my previous CEO at Security Plus, Brent Knoll, took a great step out. And kudos to him. He invested $250,000 in Posh. That was new to that organization. That was huge. Now Posh is doing great, right? So that was a very smart move on his part because he wanted to be in that. But you can make investments in things that are not going to pay off immediately. And so a lot of the board members and how they manage their CEOs, they don't look at necessarily at the future. They want to know what your financial station is today. And investments take time to pay off. That's why I believe it's not going to change overnight. That's why you make incremental investments in technology. You don't bet the house. You make incremental things to improve. And over time, that'll pay off. And if they don't, you make an investment, it doesn't pay off, it's okay. Good. We learn from it and the next time we make a better one. I think another thing, because I have worked a lot with the younger folks, I think one of the things that younger folks desire, and they bring the technology acumen to the table, but they desire to be heard. Okay. You know, sometimes leaders think, well, you don't have the wisdom I do. You haven't a lot of experience I do. And they kind of shut them off. That's not what the younger people want to be heard. Conversely, and I teach the young people this as well, you may have an opinion, okay, but how is that really, is it just an opinion? Is there so when you voiced your opinion on something, do you have anything to back it up? Do you have any wisdom to share on why you came up with that, opinion? A lot of young people just have been taught that they can say whatever they want to hear, but they don't, they don't have that background to back it up. And so when I let my team know, I want to hear what you have to say, but make sure that you have, for lack of a better word, justification for your opinion, because I want to hear what you have to say, and I will listen to you, but just don't shoot from the hip.
I love that you brought that up, Bill. I think not to talk too much about my own outfit, but I've been with this organization now for 7 years, and I can absolutely tell you from the bottom of my heart, it's one of the biggest reasons why my tenure is so long for a technology company, and why I'll be there till the day I'm dead and gone, is because it comes down to a culture of that. And I think that's a very difficult culture, especially in today's day and age, to cultivate. I would give a lot of credit to our 3 founders, Siva, Prabhakar, and Tom. Siva and Prabhakar were former Intel employees back in the Andy Grove days. I don't know if you probably actually are the type of person that would have studied and looked at Andy Grove's kind of style and how he ran Intel, and was touted as one of the most successful CEOs in history. And a lot of it had to do with this challenge culture that was developed, right? And so that challenge culture has been really embodied here. And that's exactly how it works, right? Anyone can challenge anyone at any time on anything, but you better come prepared. You've got to have some justification for it. You can't just want to pick a fight for the sake of picking a fight. And then you have to be prepared for the reverse challenge. So if they challenge you back, you don't get to get defensive about it. You challenge them, they're challenging you back, they want to see why. But ultimately that leads to a really healthy culture, if done right, of continuing to evolve, give people a voice. And what it really means is that you get to draw on people's unique experiences, perspectives, and ideas, right? I again, not to use myself as the example too much, but I talk about that a lot with my team, right? When I'm hiring for my team, the absolute last thing I want is another Josh. I want somebody that's the opposite of me. I want somebody that's going to bring new ideas and challenge me and want to see us have these data-driven challenge arguments that are productive. And I think kind of like what you were saying, it's just bringing that culture in to an organization really helps it to kind of evolve and move, and not just, like you're saying, kind of get stuck in the mud of saying, well, we're just going to keep doing things the way we've always done them, or we're going to do what the other people down the street are doing. And at the same time, it's a very daunting task to manage appropriately taking those risks as a financial institution, right? I think we talk about it a lot on this podcast. We'd love to be able to take a lot more risks. Elon Musk can sit back and go, we learned from that when the rocket blows up. But like, if you blow up your credit union and all your members lose your money, like, that's kind of a big deal, right?
That's why you have to do incrementally. But Josh, you hit a beautiful point, right? If you, as a leader, you don't want everybody to agree on everything. You want people to challenge. So you don't want to go into it. Everybody has to agree. If we don't agree 100%, we're going to table whatever we're doing, right? No. Say like you have 5 people. 2 people need to be willing to share, to take a step out. They have to understand, okay, the environment needs to be, the culture needs to be that they can be heard and they can make their case. But they also have to understand that a leader is put into a position that they have to make the decision. So they're going to be held accountable. So just because I learned this early time, I, as a CFO, they used to call me constantly finding objections, right? But no, I just wanted to discuss things. And a lot of times the CEO would say, appreciate your input. I've considered it. We're going to go in this direction, not the direction. Good. You accept that. And you look yourself in the mirror and go, okay, what could I have done better to position what I had thought? Obviously, it didn't go. Or maybe sometimes there's just nothing you can do. But you need to understand that type of culture needs to exist in leaders. And younger people, they expect that. They expect to be heard. And again, it goes back to whether they have the background to do it. But
Yeah.
it worked because change is inevitable.
Mhm.
Technology is changing so rapidly that we have no choice. Now, one of the most difficult things, I will tell you, you mentioned it already, smaller credit unions have a very difficult time operating with different channels of delivery. Okay. So they may have, again, it's just maybe 50% of their members are over 50, 25 or 40 to 50. They only have maybe 10% under 25. Okay. So they've got to attract the younger folks, but they can't ignore the older folks who don't care about necessarily. They don't care about that. So when you have multifaceted channels of delivery, it gets pretty expensive. And so that's one of the challenges for small credit unions. Larger credit unions can afford to, they have the scale to kind of have multiple channels, but the smaller credit unions, that's really tough for them. And so somehow that's where collaboration comes in. I mean, collaboration with George Washington University, reaching out to people, helping them trying to get started in their endeavor. That collaboration helps them get started, offering from the get-go reasonable technology. And so let's just hope that works out.
That kind of leads me back to what you were talking about earlier. And I'd love to get your perspectives as, somebody who's been in a CEO and CFO role for so many years, and just draw back on all the changes that you've seen. When you first started in the credit union industry as an executive, what was the percentage of your allocation of budget to tech versus what it is today, right? I'd gather that it's probably a pretty significant change between those two.
Yes, there's no question about it that the dollars towards that are much greater, but you don't have a choice. But that doesn't mean you can't be smart with your dollars.
Yes.
Right? Again, it's about incremental successes and incremental. One of the things that this organization, Forefront's done, and I think it's wonderful, is that they've created a team, project management team, so that wisdom learned from each project management, that learning matrix carries forward to every project. And there's a certain level of confidence. So they have, their plates are full. Okay. There's a lot of projects going on, but they're collaborating. So again, it's about credit union collaboration. They're getting you folks involved. It makes a difference in the success of the organization.
Kind of going back to talking about the balance of the spend of budget and things like technology, I think that also speaks to what you were referring to earlier about, investments take time. I think analogy that comes to mind is, planning for your retirement. If you start planning for retirement and you get to retirement, you're like, great, I planned for retirement. It's when you don't plan for retirement and all of a sudden you get to retirement and you go, oh, crud. And now it's impossible to make up that gap, right? There's just not enough time. And I think probably a similar analogy to, technology for credit unions is if you're not investing in technology, the time that you're going to probably realize it is probably when it's too late. It's when that membership has aged out. You've not been able to clearly articulate your value proposition through technology, to your point, as a conduit of how we actually help people make a difference in their lives, build relationships. If you've not used technology as a conduit to continue that, it's going to be really hard to sell the next generation of banking consumers on your value proposition when they don't know it in the first place and you don't have the technology that they've come to expect as table stakes. So it's a really difficult thing to say. At the same time, we have to be fiduciaries that are responsible for maintaining the stability of the credit union. It's got to have its members' best interest in heart when you're spending their money. But at the same time, we've got to invest in the future to make sure that, we're able to carry on the beautiful legacy that credit unions have created.
Just really a lot of things. Technology to me needs to be like duct tape, okay? That there's many different uses for duct tape, right? So your technology needs to have many different uses. And the more uses it has, the better off it is, okay? So again, technology is critical to moving forward. You don't have a choice. So you have to allocate the resources to do it, but you have to do it smart. You have to do it strategically. And you have to fail fast. What do they say? Fail fast if it doesn't work. Fail forward, but fail fast or whatever. And learn from your mistakes in that arena. I just think the credit unions have to do something. We cannot continue the same old, or we will get what we don't want, okay? Do we want 250 credit unions or whatever it is going away every year? Is that what we want? I don't think so. There's ways to address that I think is necessary. But we are, one of the constraints that we are under, and because of the risk factor, is the regulatory environment, right? CFPB and CUA, whatever we're talking about. We sit by and we watch this stuff going on and you shake your heads. You need a strong representative group, right? That's out there with the responding and doing what they can. But we have to be very cognizant of that because our regulator is risk averse, pretty much. And I know that pretty much firsthand because I've been trying to help George Washington University get a charter for 6 years. Smartest kid, I'll tell you. When I think about these 19 and 20 and 21-year-old kids, and I look back at me and I go, whoa. Now, obviously, George Washington's the cream folks, but just surrounding yourself with these I'll call them kids. They're kids. They're so smart. And so they trying to start a credit union. And 2 years ago, the NCUA came out with the pronouncement that they want to help start new credit unions. Well, George Washington University with the smartest kids, one of the best boards. You're not going to find a better board of advisors for a credit union than George Washington University has. Chip Filson, so many different people. They're top-notch people. I love being on that board. I just surrounded myself with those people and the young people. Oh my gosh, it's awesome. But for 6 years we met on this. And so NCUA came out with a pronouncement that they were going to create a pre-charter status because one of the reasons that the credit union has not gotten its charter was frankly capital raising. So NCUA has come out with an ability to become a status that you can actually go out and raise capital. Sadly, my understanding is that they did a beta and they didn't 4 credit unions to help do this raising, and they didn't include GW. How that's possible after 6 years of this process is very disappointing. But you try to make a difference. Sometimes you just got to say, battle yourself, bang your head against the wall, and try to figure out. Because sometimes you don't have control over how NCUA is going to come respond. Obviously, NCUA is really, really hot on this liquidity issue now. That a lot of credit unions have gone out and done short-term fundraising to cover like the potential for CDs to be maturing in 2024. And a lot of it is going to be maturing. Well, how are we going to address that? That's a valid concern. And it's going to be universal. But the thing, again, I think it all boils down to how boards, and it's boards, reward their CEO for how much risk they're willing to take.
I think that's a really good point. I think I've said it multiple times here. I don't necessarily envy community financial institution leadership sometimes because they definitely have a rock and a hard place, right? On one hand, I absolutely understand and appreciate the difficult regulations that are passed down from some of these different entities because we don't need every single credit union in the US going through a Silicon Valley type of incident, right? We need to make sure that they're viable. We need to make sure that they're making smart decisions for longevity. But at the same time, we have to find ways to allow them to and reward them for taking the right type of risk. And that's a really tall order to get right. And to your point, like with guardrails, we have to be open to failure as an option. But at the same time, there have to be guardrails in place so that there's not catastrophic failures. Like you're saying, I mean, being down completely for 2 weeks, all of a sudden having a massive liquidity issue. These are things that are not okay. They're not okay failures, right? There's a difference between a failure that's a learning and a failure that has, irreversible catastrophic impacts. And so there is a really tough balance between those things. And like you were saying, I mean, tech is kind of this new world of navigating that, right? And so credit unions are supposed to be, pushing into this world of technology. And sometimes they're limited and constrained by things like budget, or maybe from, legacy technology that they're tied to. And all of a sudden, now your reputation risk as an institution is directly tied to one of these technology vendors that you may be reliant on, right? And so how do you make smart decisions? How do you allocate budget? And I really wanted to come back to something that you've talked about many, many times through this episode, Bill, which is just that, kind of credit union superpower is the collaboration element. And I've had a handful of guests, and the one that just always comes to mind for me when this topic comes up is Tracy Miller from Pioneer Credit Union. They're, I think, about a 700 million asset credit union, kind of out of the Mountain Home, Boise, Idaho area. And Tracy, I will just say it bluntly, she's a freaking rock star. She's brilliant. She's brilliant because she's really, really good at looking around at the market and saying, what kind of things will bring meaningful benefit and value and impact to my membership? And then she looks at how can I access that or get them access to that? And one of her strengths is she's done a really good job of collaborating with other credit unions to pool things like collective buying power. And so she'll go to this, technology company and be like, hey, look, you only service $5 billion credit unions and above. I'm not that, but I have 10 $500 million credit unions and we'll all sign up with you if you'll cut us a deal. Or she's done a phenomenal job of looking at, kind of new to market people that have to prove use cases, that need pilot customers, that need reference customers. And she's built herself a really brilliant little sandbox incubator to test some of these things out while lowering the risk of, if it fails, what's the impact to my membership? But she's been able to say, hey, your new cool product, I'll be the first one on it, but I want a 75% discount or whatever, right? And she does a great job of it. And then all of a sudden she's on this platform that big credit unions are like scratching their heads trying to figure out how they can get in their budget. And Tracy's over here like, I've had it for a year, right?
Yeah.
So I think
you hit the nail on the head. And again, credit unions collaborate. So Tracy goes out there, is willing to take a step out because obviously her board allows her to do that. Okay. They understand there's this investment in things, but having Tracy succeed using this product will lead to other credit unions participating in this product because credit unions collaborate. They look for that. I will tell you that our chairman of the board, the Forefront Credit Union, at our recent last week, annual get together, stood up in front of everybody and said, Forefront Credit Union made a lot of investments last year. Okay. It's going to take time for them to pay off. So it may not look great in 2023 for bottom line stuff, but we have made willing to make these investments step out for the future because we believe it'll pay off. That's the kind of leadership I believe the credit unions need because it gives the CEO comfort that they don't always have to worry about what you have to have a decent bottom line. I'm not saying negative, but it gives the CEO comfort that oh my gosh, we didn't have a really great year compared to the past 2 years. We're moving in the right direction.
That is brilliant leadership, if you ask me, because it's so important to set proper expectations, right? I mean, you look at this with any organization. Hey, this was a building year. And so I need you to trust me that we've made some calculated risks and some decisions that we may not see the direct ROI to for some time. this may take some time. But setting that expectation is really, really important in making sure that you get people aligned to your point, to be willing to do that the next time, right? And to give the team, the leadership team, the board, the confidence, and not even just that. I mean, like you said, I mean, everything trickles down, right? That gives your entire organization the confidence to be able to say, hey, you know what? I can think about how can I take some calculated risks to set us up for success for the future, right? Be mindful of today, but be looking towards tomorrow.
I will tell you that in today's busy world, too many people move from project to project, and they do not take the time to create the wisdom learning matrix. And that it takes time. You need to sit down and say, okay, what worked, what didn't. It's called debriefing or whatever you want to call it. And so that is the key to building confidence. And it just goes back. It's just a circle.
Yeah.
And, once you debrief and you have indeed created this wisdom learning matrix, you're setting yourself up for great future. But so many people don't take the time. They don't document. They just move to the next project. And because we are busy, right? Everybody's to-do list is overwhelming. But you need to do that. And unfortunately, not a whole lot of people do it.
That is a really, really hard skill to develop. And I will fall on that sword and say I'm very guilty of that sometimes. You do. You're just constantly trying to move from fire to fire. And it's really hard to admit in the moment that taking that 10 minutes that you don't have will save you 20 minutes later. But you have to find the 10 minutes now. And I'll share a funny, silly example that I've worked very hard to try and proliferate through other areas of my life with varying degrees of success, mind you, I will admit to. But I use my Christmas lights as my example for this, Bill. So I live in Portland, Oregon, and December is pretty much a guarantee it's going to be about 40 degrees and just wet. Raining, slick, damp, moist. It's not wonderful. And that's when I'm taking down my Christmas lights, right? And every single year when I go to take down my Christmas lights, the end of December, early January, inevitably the weather is terrible. And I do not want to be outside on a ladder, on my roof, hunting through my bushes, trying to get all my Christmas lights down. I just want to rip them all out, throw them in a bin, and be done as fast as possible. And every year I remind myself, what will I think of myself next year with the work that I do today? And that reminds me that no, I want to take these down. I want to wrap them up neatly. I want to label them. This is for this bush. This is for this bush. And it takes a year for that to pay off, Bill. But next year, when I open my bin for my Christmas lights and I go, this goes to bush 1. I'm like, good on you, Josh. Good on you last year, Josh. I'm proud of you, dude. Right? But it's hard because in the moment, I just want to rip those suckers down, throw them in the box, put it up in the attic, and call it a day.
Again, it's a continuous learning process, a wisdom matrix. And as you go through your career in life and you learn, again, I happen to believe one of the most motivating things is to have goals. And then a year from now, take a look back, step back and visually look where you're going and where you've come from. And in most cases, it's like, wow, it's like it's like an iceberg, right? Most of the iceberg is underneath the water, So you just keep, and then it gives you the motivation to have another feature because you can do it. And
Yeah.
It's just exciting. I will say one thing I do want to mention, maybe it doesn't fit in, but one of the things that I have experienced with younger folks is that they feel they have the need to jump jobs every 2 years. I want to caution them about that. Sometimes, and sadly, in order to make more money, they have to jump jobs. But they also lose on any type of retirement. You mentioned retirement. So when you're jumping jobs every 2 years, you're not collecting retirement. You're not building up something. And before you know it, if you've done it a bunch of times, and like you said, you look and go, oh my gosh, I've been working 15 years and I've already collected, I have anything put away. I just encourage those to really, as a CEO of their own personal service corporation, really make an assessment whether jumping jobs every 2 years. That seems to be the methodology today. And for an extra dollar an hour or whatever it is really worth it.
Bill, one of my favorite events every single year is put on by the Pacific Northwest's Young Credit Union Professionals Group, and they do a CEO roundtable. And they have anywhere from like 8 to 15 credit union CEOs that each sit at a table with 10 to 15 chairs around it. And they start the event, everybody sits down at tables, and then they speed date the CEOs. And every 15 minutes, the CEO gets up and goes to a different table until you've talked to all the CEOs. And they just give all these young credit union professionals the opportunity to ask questions of the CEOs. And I will never forget this. I remember sitting at one of those tables and someone asked one of the CEOs, and actually, a lot of people had been asking very similar questions. This was just kind of more bluntly directed. She asked the CEO, she said, how do I get to where you are? Like, what's the path that I need to take? What job do I need to get to? And he stopped for a minute and he gave probably one of the best pieces of advice I think I'd heard that whole night. And he said, you want to get to where I am? Stop thinking like that. He said, I know it's really hard because sometimes this bites you in the ass. And he said, just be really good at what you're doing now. Perfect it, hone it. Like you were talking about earlier, like find out how you provide value in that and then maximize it. And then if you're in the right type of organization, that will get noticed. Now, if it doesn't get noticed and the it bites you in the ass scenario comes up, then that's a good indicator you shouldn't be in that organization, right? But if you're doing the right things, the right leaders will recognize that. And they'll look for, this person has demonstrated value in these core competencies. How can I maximize? How can I give them more opportunity to do even more with what they've been given? And that's how you get to where I am. He said, but if you're chasing it, kind of like what you said even in your intro, right? Like if you're chasing the award, it's very different than just doing the work and getting recognized for the award, right? And I thought that was such sage advice of, sometimes we're so focused on the next thing that's right in front of us. And unfortunately, sometimes you do have to, one step forward, 2 steps back, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. But as long as you're really putting in the effort to maximize your value contribution, you're probably doing some of the right things.
And that's, in my terminology, that's called blooming and blossoming where you're planted, because so many people have their eyes on something else and they're just, but again, if you're focused on creating value, and as you, the CEO of your own personal services corporation, you own this journey. So you can always in some form or fashion control your wisdom and learning matrix. Okay. What you get involved in. And again, you can't, if you're not blooming and blossoming what you're doing now, your leader's probably not going to put you in something else until you do that. So then you have to understand that. Again, create value. As you create the value, then you can start worrying about being green and growing and a growth stock. So
I like that. So Bill, as you look back just kind of on your wealth of experience and knowledge and kind of what you talked about in terms of just thinking about kind of documenting your learnings over the years, what do you think the future holds for credit unions? Any predictions on things that are going to be kind of top of mind or that we need to be thinking about or paying attention to? And what do you see on the horizon?
I'm hoping that, again, I love Filene, I love Q's. I'm hoping that they continue, I'm hoping that they continue to develop the young folks. I did a unofficial survey, I guess you call it, for the crashers. I looked back, I kept a listing and I used LinkedIn. And I will tell you that going back 5 years, I don't remember when I did this. I'm going to say I did it in 2017, 2018, something like that. I looked back at the crashers over that period, and with about over 50% of the crashers had left the movement.
Oh, wow.
Okay. They quit before, in my opinion, they quit before the blessing. Because as I shared with you over the last 5 years, and perceive this is going to happen over the next 5 or 7, 8 years, retirements in the credit union community are going to be significant. There's going to be opportunity. You have to do the right things. You have to build your foundation. Okay. You have to position yourself some way, shape, or form. It might be to sit on a board. Okay. It might be giving up watching TV once a week or something so you can sit on a board reading. I don't know what that means, but it might be that you have to give that up to do that. And a lot of people are not willing to do that, but it's competitive out there. And if you can do that and you're willing to do that, good leaders will notice, as you said. It'll position yourself for great opportunities.
That also makes me think, one of the things that I think was a hard thing for me to even come to a realization, right, is what types of things attract you to a certain type of job or industry or role. And, you look at especially technology companies, right? There's a big emphasis on these kind of flashy cultures and really surface level perks to get people excited. And now, along with that, sometimes includes some pretty significant compensation packages too, which you can't deny is going to be very attractive to anybody. But I think one of the lessons, learned kind of later in life is, yes, don't get me wrong. Money buys freedom, right? And I want to provide freedom to my family. So it is important for me to make a living where I can provide stability and freedom to my family, make sure they're taken care of, their needs are met, their futures are looked out for. But there's also a really big part of my soul that needs to be fed, that can't be fed with just what I'm paid. And I think a lot of times we look at, some of the organizations that have to be super flashy, have to offer these really high compensation packages. It's because actually being there is very unfulfilling or toxic. And what you find is a lot of these folks that, are only in those outfits for 1 or 2 years. And then you're just trying to chase, well, these guys paid me an exorbitant amount of money. I got to find the next place that'll pay me an exorbitant amount of money. And that's a pretty crappy place to work. So now I got to find the new place that's also going to pay me an exorbitant amount of money. And it becomes a really interesting rat race where, if there's something fundamentally, foundationally anchoring about, the values and the mission of the organization, I think that's where you start to see a lot more of the tenure. And I think that is why, in my humble opinion, why you see a lot of people like yourself where I go, how long have you been in credit unions? And they're like, oh, I'm the young pup. I've only been here 25 years, and it's because that people helping people mission and that motto is really evident. And those are the types of things where you lay your head on your pillow at night and you go, you know what? I may not have directly seen it, but what I'm doing is having an impact. And if you ask me, look, I'm not in HR. I'm not a hiring manager for a credit union, but I think that's a really big differentiator of looking for, as young people come up and are looking for a place to find purpose and to find value. And like you said, to be able to provide input. Credit unions are the perfect petri dish for that. So we need to shine the light on that. And we need to use that to attract top tier talent that is going to continue to challenge and push this industry to maintain relevancy, to be able to provide the value that they provide through that people helping people mission.
I agree. Again, I think it all circles back to you're the CEO of your own personal services corporation. Your journey is yours. You own it. How you navigate that, if you think money's the issue, then you do that. If purpose trumpets money, there's a balance, obviously. I mean, you gotta live. And so it is what it is. So if you own your journey, then you look in the mirror and you say, the decisions I make are mine, and I will do what I need to do. I got to figure out what the lights are going at.
Yeah, that's the office telling you it's time to wrap up this podcast. That's hilarious. Well, Bill, in all seriousness, actually, that is a great stopping point. And I just want to thank you so incredibly much for taking time out of your day. I know that this is something that you yourself are very passionate about, but I still just want you to know how much I appreciate you taking the better part of a couple of hours of your day to spend with me to be able to impart some of this wisdom to our listeners. But before I go, I do have 2 final questions for you. So where do you go to stay up to date on what's happening in our industry? And what are maybe some of the resources that you could encourage others to use as well?
highlight it again, how critical it is to develop a true network. Harvey McKay was the first one that I read about develop, way back when I was young, about developing networks and truly making a difference. My network, the people I know are just phenomenal people. I mean, so, I belong to Q's. I belong to the CUNA Finance Council. I've developed relationships throughout my career on purpose, and not to just have somebody connected to me, but to have a relationship. So I do a lot of I love to read, and I'm one of those people that I like to hear contrary opinions to as long as there's basis behind it.
Yeah.
I think
I love that.
that's awesome. I do a lot of reading about that. Because not everybody agrees with me, and I don't want them to agree with me. Because consensus is the absence of leadership. So that's what I do. And I'm very fortunate that the folks that I've been involved with and here at Forefront, they allow me to belong to these organizations. And as I shared with you, I sit on the board of GW University Credit Union Initiative. I also sit on the board of Makuma, where I get to the Metropolitan Area Managers Association, it's called. I get to network with just great people. And are they all the same? And the good thing is, no, they're all different. I play golf when I can. This last year I didn't play as much golf, but this year I'm going to play a little more.
A little more golf.
I strategically look for positioning myself. And that's my advice to young people. Find out who you really would like to have on your radar. Figure out what they like to do. And if they like to golf, maybe you could get lucky. Maybe you could go to the charity event. You might have to take a personal day off, okay? Maybe your credit union won't allow you to go to play to a charity event. But, you might have to, everybody should have a budget of their own personal development, whether it's it could be education, but it also could be other things. And they should have. So, if you have to pay $100 out of your pocket, and sometimes if you ask them and say, like the GW students did when they went to the Makuma golf outing, hey, we're students. And so they reached out to Allied. Allied paid their freight, right? So
Nice.
Right? So they got to play. I think one of them got to play with John Bratsakis. I mean, they get to be with leaders on a golf course.
Yeah.
So, learn golf. It's not that hard to it's hard to get good.
The whole takeaway of this whole podcast is Bill saying, play more golf.
Learn. If you want to network with people and connect leaders, play golf. And I'll tell you, one of the things that credit unions do, they have charity golf events. They're charity golf events for Children's Miracle Network, whatever it is.
Mm.
Yeah, there's the charity. And if you don't want to play golf, go out and run the putting contest or do something to volunteer. If you want to meet people in fun, I always go run they have putting contests, right? Everybody goes through the putting contest. And even if you don't know nothing about golf, you can watch the first couple people play. You can watch how the ball breaks, and you can say, hey, the ball breaks 2 feet to go to the cup. And they'll think, oh, wow, thanks for the information. Now I have a little bit, that kind of stuff. And they get to meet people. So look for avenues to connect with people. It doesn't have to be golf. It could be the cherry blossom race. I used to volunteer for the cherry blossom race in DC. There's so many volunteer opportunities that I will tell you, Forefront rewards volunteer. They actually expect you to volunteer in the community.
That's awesome.
We take one of the days, like, forgive me if it's the wrong name, but it used to be Columbus Day. It's a volunteer day here. So we can volunteer. The whole organization goes and volunteers, does something, which is wonderful in the community. So my advice to young people is to volunteer if you can, strategically. Find out who's doing it. Find out if you can network with them, because again, good leaders are looking for people to help along the way.
I love that. Well, if people want to connect with you, or if they want to learn more about Forefront Credit Union, how can they do that, Bill?
They can reach out to me if they don't mind on LinkedIn. That's okay with me. I would kind of prefer that. I
Yeah.
mean, frankly, honestly, I get 125 emails a day. It's tough enough to keep through. So I prefer you not email me at work. LinkedIn is quick and easy. And then once that has been established, reach out to me. If you're a young person, no, I do a lot of my mentorship through CUNA. I do, through the Finance Council, and I'll do one internship through the African American Credit Union Coalition. I may do 2 internships, mentorships a year. I'm willing to do up to 5 because I gain something from them as well.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be 25. As a matter of fact, one of my mentees last semester was 60 years old.
Oh, cool.
So, age means nothing. They just want to connect because they understand that connectivity and that importance. And again, I can only share my wisdom and my journey. There's a lot of it. That's why it's important to have more than one, because there's a lot of people that have diversity of experience. And I share what I know, and hopefully that's of value. But there are many other wonderful people that are willing to mentor. You just have to take a little bit of a step out. You have to reach out to them because they can't know everybody. And as long as you're committed to it, make it happen.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And if people want to learn about the credit union, just forefront.
Yeah, they can just reach out to me on LinkedIn and then just, say I'd like to learn more about Forefront or what they're doing. Just hook up with me, send me a message, and then I'll take a look at it. And if it's something that I can be of value to you, you can send me an email at work, and I'll see what I can do. I want to be very upfront. Before I share, I don't want to. I'm not just going to share any competitive, strategies or anything like that, unless it's okay with the leadership here. They're pretty open in many aspects. As I shared with you, our CEO is all about collaboration in the credit union community, but I also have to be careful about that.
Of course. Well, Bill, I want to thank you so much for taking the time. And I just want to say thank you for coming and being a guest on the Digital Banking Podcast.
Yeah, I'm very honored to be here. I'm here as a result of one of my mentees who reached out to Josh.
Chris Trummer.
Yes.
I know. Actually, Bill, real quick, while you're on that, I have to say, I'm glad you said it too. I mean this with all due respect. I thought the same thing when I met the group at the George Washington University Credit Union Initiative. When I met that group of kids, I was like, goodness gracious, I feel like an idiot. They're so intelligent. I was an idiot at that age. Like, oh my gosh, this is such an incredible, talented group of folks. We met Chris Trummer through that initiative. When he graduated, he actually ended up getting hired at one of our company's spin-out companies. And the work that he has done is, mind-blowing is an understatement. It's so cool. So anyway,
cool.
shout out to Chris.
Yeah, shout out to these. Okay, you have to be of certain ilk to get into GW, right? But most of these kids, despite their just awesomeness, are pretty humble.
Yeah.
They understand because they have been mentored. Hey, guys, don't be going around being, I'm the best. I graduated from GW and I did this. I was the the chairman of the board of GW University Credit Union Initiative, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
They are receptive. They understand that no one gets anywhere in life without somebody pushing them, pulling them, or reaching down and lifting them up. Okay. People need people in their lives to make that difference. I would be shocked if there's very many leaders that have not had people helping them throughout their life. And that's what leaders lay their head on their pillow at night saying, hey, thanks for reaching out. I'll be more than happy to help you in your journey to the degree that I can. And it gives us purpose in life.
Yeah, I love that. Well, again, Bill, thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I appreciate all the insight. And thanks for being a guest.
My pleasure. Have a great one.
Thank you for listening to the Digital Banking Podcast powered by Typho. Find more episodes on digitalbankingpodcast.com or subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.